Hello everyone, my name is Alexander Cannon and I'm an Associate Professor of Music at the University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom. I'm an ethnomusicologist, a kind of music researcher who studies musical practice, music performance, and musical knowledge in specific community contexts. Ethnomusicologists generally are interested in studying music from relative and comparative viewpoints. From a relative viewpoint, we are interested in how music enables very particular forms of communication and identity maintenance in a particular region of the world. Most ethnomusicologists do not believe that music is a universal language. The meaning of particular groupings of sounds have very specific meanings in different parts of the world. Yes, it is possible that a particular tune sounds similar in two disparate locales and potentially signifies a kind of happiness, for instance. However, the tune is not exactly the same in these locales, and the specific nature of that happiness and the stories that the sounds tell will not be the same. Even if a particular tune has a common origin, say in France in the 1920s, when that tune is distributed, it will acquire new meanings. The tune will be reshaped to fit local performance practices and aesthetic beliefs. If that 1920s tune was sent to the colonies in North Africa and Indochina, it will have been performed by different people in different contexts and be used to tell new stories. It will have been repurposed by local musicians to fit local deu in Vietnam and Makam in Morocco. In other words, the tune takes on new lives, and ethnomusicologists attempt to understand these new lives by undertaking ethnographic fieldwork. That is, we speak with practitioners and listeners alike to understand how music operates in these specific contexts. Ethnomusicologists undertake comparative work as well, oftentimes by adding to a corpus of theories of music described in previous ethnomusicological literature. Ethnomusicologists might focus their studies on the music of the Hui court, or sounds of indigenous American rituals, in order to understand how music helps shape identity, or how particular technologies change listening practices. This is why ethnomusicologists read and teach a great deal about musics outside their area of specialization, so they have an awareness of theories of how music makes or reshapes community. This does not mean that ethnomusicologists believe that theories of music making in one area of North America are directly applicable to another area of Asia. It simply means that we use previous literature as a means of comparison to understand how an area of the world is similar or different to another. The ethnomusicologist's toolbox, then, offers a wide range of theories and practices that can help generate knowledge and understanding of the world's musics and musicians. As an ethnomusicologist, I primarily study the musics of southern Vietnam, especially Đơn Ca Tài Tử, which has its origins in the Mekong Delta. Most will know Đơn Ca Tài Tử as the music of Cải Lương, but there are some very important differences between Đơn Ca Tài Tử and Cải Lương that relate to the histories of the two genres. I have several articles and an upcoming book on the history and contemporary performance practices of this genre of music. However, today I want to focus my comments on what I have come to understand about the power of Đơn Ca Tài Tử. It's important to note that I focus my discussion on the lives of Đơn Ca Tài Tử performances and musicians in Saigon, Cần Thơ, and Long Xuyên in the Mekong Delta. Musicians of Đơn Ca Tài Tử improvise on melodic fragments with string and woodwind instruments, sing songs with origins from other regions of Vietnam and abroad, and constantly bring new sounds into the southern Vietnamese performance spaces. This yields a highly syncretic and experimental genre, adopting a diverse range of practices now found in southern Vietnam, as well as among Vietnamese communities in the United States, France, Australia, and elsewhere. Đơn Ca Tài Tử emerged in the colonial period of Vietnamese history out of the diverse sociocultural lives of southern Vietnamese musicians. The music appeared following migration of nhạc cung đình Huế, court musicians, and Ca Huế, Huế chamber music musicians from Annam to Cochin China in the late 19th century. According to some sources, musicians left central Vietnam during or immediately after the anti-colonial Cần Vương, loyalty to the king movement from 1885 to 1889. The movement ultimately failed, but one of the musicians who resettled, Nguyễn Quang Đại, also known as Ba Đời, became one of the original musicians of đơn ca tài tử. In informal music settings, these musicians mixed Central Vietnamese tunes, including court tunes and ca huế, with those of Vietnamese classical opera, hát bội, and ceremonial music created in temples, nhạc lễ. Musicians improvised on these tunes in between or after performances of hát bội and nhạc lễ. Musicians therefore sought some refuge from the more rigid performance settings and an opportunity for greater mixture with the other musics present in southern Vietnam at the time. The name đơn ca tài tử has two parts. Đơn ca designates musical action, and tài tử indicates sociocultural disposition. Đơn is a term specific to southern Vietnam that means to play an instrument. Elsewhere, the word đàn is used. Ca means to sing. Tài tử is a term of Chinese origin. Literally translated, tài means to have ability, and tử means a gentleman. Therefore, the genre name đơn ca tài tử means the playing and singing of talented gentlemen. Although not necessarily practiced as such, the term implies elite music making. Historically, a tài tử need not work to make a living and can afford to play music as a non-professional. This association with the educated elite leads to the translation of the genre into English as the music of amateurs or the music of talented amateurs. The term tài tử also has a well-established colloquial meaning in southern Vietnam, used to reprimand or denigrate in a joking fashion. One musician friend of mine explained to me in 2014 that the term signifies fake, or to put on airs. Another suggested that tài tử designates a casual attitude towards life that borders laziness. When one friend complains to another about the latter's lackadaisical approach to an activity or task, the former says, tài tử quá mày, that's really tài tử. In school, attending class whenever one wishes is also called tài tử. So they might use the phrase học hành tài tử lắm. Although sarcastic, these comments reveal an understanding of and perhaps subtle contempt for the tài tử figure. This explains why some translate this music as for diversion or for entertainment. And indeed, individuals who do not need to work for a living play đơn ca tài tử. Today, most of the musicians with whom I have interacted have full-time jobs as office workers, teachers, or farmers, but they dedicate their evenings and weekends to music making with friends. No typical đơn ca tài tử ensemble exists today. A musician may play alone, tập tấu, or with one other individual, song tấu, or in ensemble performance, hòa tấu, with other instrumentalists and one or two singers. The makeup of the ensemble involves combinations of mostly string instruments, including the tranh, zither, kim, moon-shaped lute, cò, two-stringed fiddle, bow, monochord, and other string instruments. And we also sometimes find woodwind instruments. However, the texture of this music is heterophonic, meaning that each musician simultaneously plays a similar version of the same tune, but what each instrumentalist plays is not exactly the same as what other instruments play. There should not be so many instrumentalists, perhaps up to 6, but more are possible, for the sound to be considered too crowded. At informal performances in homes and restaurants, large groups of friends assemble to listen to music and take turns playing a variety of instruments and songs. Individuals may join in as they wish, or may be cajoled to play a song they have performed well on a previous occasion. Participants are not forced to play and may simply sit, chat, and listen. Importantly, however, no two of the same instrument are found in performance. This also is related to the heterophonic texture, as audience members should be able to discern the tone color of each instrument. Performances of đơn ca tài tử take a particular form, which distinguishes them from related genres like cải lương. Musicians begin a work with an improvised prelude called a rao, which means a call to people to buy something, according to Lê Tuấn Hồng. The term rao also appears in the phrase rao hàng bán vật, or the classified ad. My thanks to PQ Fund for pointing this out to me. The rao organizes the listening experience of the audience and the performance experience of the performers. For example, it establishes the respective style of the musicians performing and identifies the work as Deng Ka Tek Tu rather than a related genre, such as Sky Luang, which may feature a short prelude filled with rapid embellishment. The rao of Deng Ka Tek Tu also introduces the musical quality of the deu, meaning mode or tune, to be depicted in the named work that follows. In southern Vietnam, there are 4 deu. Bac means from the north, and the pieces depict strong and joyous characteristics. Ha designates 7 compositions known as the Bai Bai Ko, or 7 pieces of the Dang Ko fiddle, borrowed from the nhạc lễ ritual music repertoire. Nam is the 3rd deu, and it means from the south, and pieces depict various sad and melancholy characteristics. Wan is the 4th. Wan pieces evoke a deep and powerful sadness. One musician begins the rao, and other musicians enter, adding their improvisations to the increasingly complicated texture. It lasts from 30 seconds to several minutes, depending on time constraints, the quality of the musical ideas produced, and the volition of the leader of the ensemble, who determines when the rao will end. When the leader wishes to conclude the prelude, the musician slows down the melodic lines produced. Oftentimes, the leader does not need to make any visual cues, since the musicians listen to each other intently. Sensing the conclusion of the prelude, other musicians slow down as well and begin crafting a melodic line that will end on an important pitch of the deu. It is not necessary for all musicians to end and play this pitch simultaneously. The end of the rao occurs when the leader reaches this pitch and simultaneously plays the songlang, a wooden clapper played with a foot, to indicate the ending point. Any other musicians not at that pitch stop their melody and play the final pitch, following the click of the songlang. Here, I play a rao produced by a group of musicians led by Huỳnh Khai, the current director of the traditional music department at the Ho Chi Minh City Conservatory. Some of you may know this institution as the Trường Quốc gia âm nhạc, which was established in Saigon in 1956. A named work follows. Although the music is improvised, musicians direct their melodies towards points of convergence, often at the ends of phrases or sometimes in the middle of phrases when all musicians play the same note. These points exist as moments of a basic structural melody called lòng ban, studied with a teacher or through the memorization of handwritten solfege notation or tablature notation. In performance, the musicians embellish the lòng ban by drawing on the inspiration provided by the space of the performance, nature, the sound of the instrument in which they perform, and other musicians and individuals in the performance space. The repertoire of Deng Ka Tek Tu is varied, incorporating pieces adopted from ritual music, classical theater, a large corpus of folk songs in southern Vietnam, as well as Chinese, Khmer, and French tunes adopted for Vietnamese instruments. In descriptions of this repertoire, musicians and scholars oftentimes highlight the 20 primary compositions called the Ban To Gom that constitute the core Deng Ka Tek Tu repertoire. Since complete performances of these works can last for 30 minutes or more, musicians play excerpts of the works or other pieces, including Ban Rơi, literally fallen pieces adopted from other genres of Vietnamese music, and Ban Sang Tak Mới, newly composed pieces, such as 2 of the most widely performed works today, including Nhạc Có Hoài Lang, meaning listening to the sound of the night drum, I think of my husband, and of course, Vòng Cổ, nostalgia for the past. I now continue the performance I started previously, which is an excerpt of one of the 20 primary compositions titled Le Tuition, or Flowing Water. important to note that Vietnamese traditional music practice is caught between methods of categorizing, oftentimes necessary for national or international recognition, and ground-level performance practices that resist easy classification. Researchers from cosmopolitan centers exacerbate this problem, bringing language-based understandings to the field where speaking is dismissed in favor of other kinds of communication. They, and even I on occasion, impose traditional music as some kind of fixed societal category, and then classify melodies, forms, names of specific compositions, and other elements based on previous scholarship. This becomes especially problematic when categorization becomes corrective. I once witnessed a Vietnamese music scholar tell an elderly musician that the number of frets on his instrument was incorrect because the number did not fit into a certain theory of numerical symbolism. When someone imposes a theoretical understanding of genre onto a practicing musician, a clear problem emerges. At this stage, I'd like to introduce some of the comparative elements of ethnomusicology to refocus my evaluation of Đơn ca tài tử. In so doing, I make brief references to other works of ethnomusicologists, works I will cite at the end of this presentation. Ethnomusicologists have started to move away from defining genre by category and focus on process of genre maintenance enacted by practitioners. In her study of Gaelic songs in Cape Breton, ethnomusicologist Heather Sparling advocates that ethnographers write of genre as, quote, complex human constructions that have nebulous, permeable, and shifting boundaries, end quote. She recognizes the difficulty in pinpointing process and genre, noting, for example, that significant numbers of songs have no genre classification. Sparling accurately indicates that the lack of explicitness is central to the protection and maintenance of sustainable practice. Ethnomusicologists must engage more flexibly and carefully with categories and realize that the scholarly voice can resound in silence. One must heed, therefore, what ethnomusicologist Salwa El-Chouhan Castello-Branco identifies as the social role of ethnomusicology in studies of genre. My understanding of Đơn ca tài tử follows a call by Castello-Branco to revisit musical category and, quote, propose new concepts that represent the multiple processes that characterize contemporary musical production, end quote. Most practitioners of Southern Vietnamese traditional music understand it as a constantly negotiated set of practices continually made and remade through improvisation. They establish connections between different bodies of knowledge and understanding to generate what they believe to be authentic and durable practice. Extra musical concepts and musical materials are drawn into Đơn ca tài tử performance to help maintain the genre's relevance. One sound might be understood as originating from Chinese populations, but after performance by Vietnamese musicians, the sound starts to evoke both Chinese and Vietnamese identities. Repetition in multiple performance contexts makes sure the negotiated practices continue to circulate and generates categories of possible practice, including the instruments, modes, and repertoire appropriate for Đơn ca tài tử. Musicians of Đơn ca tài tử designate genre through social function and seek personal expression to work through particular difficulties and communicate with others. For the late master musician Nguyễn Vĩnh Bảo, sitting alone or with one or two friends while drinking coffee and playing music serve as an effective performance and bonding. Quote, I consider music my very good friend, he told me in 2018. Music helps me with many things. It corrects my character, and it helps me accept life as it comes, end quote. In other settings, music performance takes place for fun only, to reaffirm a community of interaction outside one's home and place of employment. In field notes from January 2015, I described a typical performance setting in Cần Thơ in the following way. It was a very convivial atmosphere and setting. We sat on the roof of the restaurant, which allowed for a nice breeze to blow through, and for us to watch the blue sky turn dark as evening fell. These musicians have a good deal of fun when they get together. They discuss everyday matters, music, culture. They debate common knowledge, and they get drunk. Music was found throughout. They sang longer songs, such as Nhân Thiên, and shorter songs in quick succession. Some of the improvised pieces were very funny, especially when one of my teachers, Trần Minh Đức, implored an imaginary shifu to do various things in one song. Other pieces made direct reference to what we were doing at that moment and who was there. This is the đơn ca tài tử that is closer, I think, to its origins, one that is simply used to express camaraderie, humor, and sometimes sadness. These musicians oftentimes look past the instruments, melodies, modes, and other categories and seek other goals of performance. Given the complicated history of southern Vietnam and the imposition of certain governmental and international restrictions, these musicians neither need nor want strictly defined genre categories to make meaningful sound. Rather than view genre simply as a collection of instruments, modes, and pieces, I argue that musicians construct genre around a series of thematic loops, or social concepts with which musicians engage or contemplate through the performance of sound. The notion of the thematic loop has been described by philosopher Julia Kristeva as bounded extramusical themes or opposites which generate art or performance. In a 2016 article that I wrote for the journal Asian Music, I propose 3 thematic loops for đơn ca tài tử performance. The first involves constructions of gender. This most often takes the form of using women in performance to uphold Vietnamese masculinity, although there is evidence that this is in a period of transition. The second involves the nature of ethnic difference between Vietnamese musicians who largely perform đơn ca tài tử and various other non-Vietnamese actors. This has the effect of bringing the history of southern Vietnam into constant negotiation whenever a performance occurs. More importantly, it solidifies narratives of Vietnamese nationalism and ultimately upholds Vietnam's claims over the geographical and cultural spaces of southern Vietnam. The third features an attempt to generate compatibility between urban and rural musical performance. In performance, musicians articulate preferences, for example, by presenting their masculinity in particular ways through gesture, for playing particular instruments or particular pieces, and for adopting particular improvisational styles associated with elite and urban performance practice. These stylistic choices then feed back into the loop, regenerating the efficacy of the loop and strengthening genre. In this setting, I will not go into more detail about this argument, as I do not want to take up too much more of your time. If you are interested in reading the article, you may download it from JSTOR if you have access to this database through your university or public library. Alternatively, you may write to me by email, and I will happily provide you with a copy of the article. I will conclude then with some more music. A video of a performance that I recorded in 2009 in Cần Thơ. The piece performed is Mẫu đơn, meaning peony, and it depicts some of the dynamism of several thematic loops. We see a group of men from both urban and rural southern Vietnam playing instruments and a woman performing a piece of Chinese origin, but that is expressed here in thoroughly Vietnamese ways.
2, 3.
Ôi sương mù phố dân, các ai nguyện mau leo từng sóng, trong xa xa đón hai nhau.
Làng con thương lung nhau.
Ai âu ơi cho ta nhắn lời về người yêu ta ở nơi kinh thành, gần An Lộc Sơn dành nhớ thương ai, có nhớ yêu lòng em nhớ, ngồi bờ vơ ở trên màn thuyền, các tiếng kêu nàng hỡi thôi chân nghe tiếng em tiếng nghe sông xô chân chân trong nơi núi cao trắng ngàn, hơi tơ lòng tan nát xót xa, nàng ơi cái chân nàng ơi, giờ này nay cung quan nàng có nhớ tới An Lộc Sơn, hay đã quên những câu hẹn thề với anh trăng nàng nói tiếng yêu, cũng bởi vì mắt nàng gây sóng gió nên quyền tôn bắt ta quét thằng đưa
Thank you very much, dear listener, for watching this video, and I thank Vascam for the opportunity to share something about my research with all of you. I hope that all of you remain safe and well. Thank you.